I accidentally sat in my sister-in-law Sable's chair during a family gathering. The moment she saw me, her face turned crimson with fury. She marched over, her eyes blazing, and without hesitation, she slapped me hard across the face in front of everyone. My cheek stung, not just from the force of the slap but from the humiliation of it happening in front of my entire family. What shocked me even more was my younger brother Merrick's reaction. Instead of defending me, he sided with Sable. At that moment, something inside me shattered. Humiliation quickly turned into anger, and I decided to call the police to report the incident. But before the authorities arrived, something unexpected happened, completely altering my perspective on the situation. My name is Lyra. I'm 25 years old and work as a marketing specialist in Dallas, Texas. I love the city for its bustling streets, vibrant art scene, and the comforting sense of community. I live in a cozy apartment, and while my job keeps me busy, my relationship with Merrick has always been the most important part of my life. Growing up, he and I were inseparable. He was the little brother I'd always wanted, my partner in crime for backyard adventures and building forts out of blankets. As we got older, our bond only strengthened. I thought nothing could ever come between us, not even when he started dating. When Merrick first introduced me to Sable, I was genuinely thrilled for him. She seemed like everything he could have wished for, charming, funny, and engaging. I still remember the day we met at a family barbecue. Merrick couldn't stop talking about her, his excitement contagious. "Lyra, you're going to love her," he had said with a wide smile. And that night, Sable seemed perfect. She was warm and easy to talk to, and for a while, I believed we could become close friends. Seeing how happy she made my brother filled me with joy. However, over time, things began to shift. At first, I dismissed my discomfort as jealousy or difficulty adjusting to sharing my brother with someone else. But soon, Sable revealed a side that was far from the warm and welcoming woman I initially met. Her remarks at family events started small, but they cut deeper with each passing encounter. One Thanksgiving, I brought my grandmother's special pumpkin pie, a recipe I'd spent hours perfecting. When dessert was served, Sable glanced at me with a smirk and casually said, "Oh, I thought I was supposed to bring dessert this year." She said it lightly, as though it didn't matter. But her comment left me embarrassed in front of everyone. I forced a smile and responded, "Must have slipped my mind," but the sting of her words lingered. As the months went on, her barbs became sharper. At one family dinner, she turned to me with a sly grin and asked, "Still single, Lyra? Maybe you should try dating someone, it might help with your personality." Her words were like daggers, cutting through me in front of everyone. Each interaction with Sable chipped away at my confidence, and it became clear that her sweetness was reserved for when she wanted to impress, not when she wanted to wound. I tried to laugh off Sable's biting comments as if they didn't bother me, but the truth was they did. Every remark chipped away at my confidence, leaving me feeling isolated and as though she was gradually pushing me out of my own family. One evening, over coffee with my best friend Zahn, I finally opened up. "Zahn, I don't know what's going on, but something feels wrong with Sable," I said, stirring my drink nervously. At first, she seemed great. Now, it's like she's a completely different person. Zahn looked at me closely. "Different how?" "She makes these little comments," I said, my frustration growing. "They sound like jokes, but they're not. It feels like she's trying to edge me out of my family." Zahn frowned. "Have you told Merrick?" I hesitated. Merrick adored Sable, and I didn't want to cause problems. I don't want to ruin things for him. He's so happy. "Lyra, you have a right to feel respected in your own family. Don't just ignore this," Zahn said seriously. I knew Zahn was right, but the thought of confronting Merrick made me uneasy. Instead, I hoped things would improve on their own. But they didn't. If anything, Sable's behavior only grew worse. She started interfering in my relationship with Merrick, deleting messages he sent me and conveniently forgetting to tell me about family gatherings. It felt like she was slowly erasing me from his life. The breaking point came during a family dinner at our parents' house. I arrived early to help set up and chose a chair without giving it a second thought. When Sable walked in and saw me sitting there, her face immediately darkened with fury. "That's my seat," she said sharply, her voice cutting through the room. I blinked in confusion. "I didn't realize anyone had assigned seats," I replied calmly. Her eyes narrowed. "It's always been my spot." "You should know that by now," she snapped. The tension in the room was palpable. Merrick tried to step in. "Come on, Sable, it's not a big deal. Let's not make a scene." But Sable refused to back down. "No. Lyra is always trying to take everything from me. She just wants to steal my spotlight." Her words hit me like a slap. My cheeks flushed as I tried to defend myself. "I'm not trying to take anything, Sable." I just sat down. But before I could say more, the tension boiled over. This wasn't just about a chair, it was about everything Sable had been doing. I realized in that moment that something had to change. Her accusations weren't just about me. They were fracturing the family dynamic I'd always cherished. The room was silent, and all eyes were on me. It was clear that what happened next would define how our family moved forward. After that family dinner, the atmosphere had shifted completely, and I knew things couldn't stay the same. The storm of emotions inside me was building, and I felt the weight of Sable's accusations pressing on me. Family had always been my sanctuary, a place where I felt valued and loved. Now it felt more like a battlefield, and I couldn't understand why. A few days later, Merrick texted me, "Can we talk? Sable feels awful about the other night." His message seemed like an attempt to smooth things over, just as he always did. I wanted to respond with anger, but instead, I kept my reply simple. "Sure, let's talk." We met at the park that weekend. It was a bright, sunny day, but the tension between us weighed me down. Merrick arrived looking uneasy, his brow furrowed with concern. "Lyra, I'm sorry about what happened," he began, his voice hesitant. Sable didn't mean for it to go that far. I looked at him, trying to put my feelings into words. "Merrick, it's not just about the chair. It's how she treats me, the little comments, the way she acts. It's hurtful." He sighed heavily, his shoulders slumping as though he carried the burden of keeping the peace. "I know she can be intense," he said, his tone pleading. "But she's been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe it's better if we just try to avoid conflict." Disappointment surged through me. "Avoiding it won't fix anything," I replied, my voice firmer now. "It feels like she's trying to push me out of your life, and I can't keep ignoring it." Merrick's expression softened, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. He was torn between his love for his wife and his loyalty to me. "I'll talk to her," he promised. "Just give it some time." But time didn't make things better. It made them worse. At family gatherings, Sable's jabs became more pointed, her attempts to undermine me more deliberate. At a barbecue one weekend, she sidled up to me with her usual smirk. "So, Lyra's still single? You must be really picky," she said, her tone dripping with fake sympathy. I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment, but I stayed calm. "I'm just focused on my career right now," I replied evenly, hoping to end the conversation. "Right," she sneered, her laugh sharp and condescending. "Because that's working out so well for you." Her words stung like a slap. It was as if she wanted me to feel small, to shrink in her presence. That night, I confided in Zahn, my best friend, over coffee. The warm, familiar scent of coffee filled the air as I vented my frustrations to him. "It's like I'm walking on eggshells around her," I said, feeling drained. "Anything I say or do sets her off." Zahn leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "Have you ever thought about looking into her past?" he asked. "Maybe there's a reason for her behavior." I hesitated. The idea of delving into Sable's past felt invasive, like crossing a boundary I wasn't sure I wanted to cross. But at the same time, I was desperate for answers. This constant tension was tearing me apart, and I felt like I was losing my brother in the process. "I don't know, Zahn," I said, stirring my drink. "What if it just makes things worse?" "You deserve to understand what's happening," Zahn said firmly. "And maybe understanding her better will help you figure out how to deal with this." I nodded, still unsure but willing to consider it. I couldn't keep living in this emotional limbo, feeling like an outsider in my own family. Something had to change, and I was determined to find a way forward, even if it meant confronting uncomfortable truths. Sometimes, to defend yourself, you need to understand the enemy, Zahn said firmly, his words grounding me in my swirling doubts. Reluctantly, I started to see the truth in his advice. After much inner turmoil, I decided to investigate Sable's past. What I uncovered left me shaken. Online records hinted at toxic relationships and even a few restraining orders filed against her by former partners. My heart pounded as I read the details. Who was this person my brother had chosen to marry? Uneasy but resolute, I share my findings with Zahn. Her past is troubling, I confessed, my voice unsteady. It might explain her behavior, but it doesn't make it any less concerning. Zahn's expression grew serious. Lyra, Merrick needs to know this. He deserves to understand who he's dealing with. That evening, I invited Merrick over for dinner, hoping the familiar warmth of a shared meal might soften the blow of what I needed to tell him. When he arrived, his shoulders seemed weighed down by unseen burdens. Thanks for coming, Merrick. I made your favorite, chicken Alfredo, I said, offering a small smile. Thanks, Lyra. It smells great, he replied, though his tired eyes betrayed the weight he was carrying. As we sat down to eat, I took a deep breath, knowing this conversation could shift everything. Merrick, I need to talk to you about Sable again. I began, keeping my voice steady. His expression darkened slightly. I thought we agreed to let things cool down, he said, sounding weary. I wish we could, but I can't let it go, I admitted. I found out some things about her that you need to know. What do you mean? He asked, concern flickering in his eyes. Carefully, I laid everything out, the toxic relationships, the restraining orders, and the ways she had been interfering in my life. She's been sabotaging my career, Merrick. Spreading rumors about me to my clients. I can't let her hurt you too. Merrick's face shifted as he processed my words. He looked torn, overwhelmed. This is a lot, Lyra. I don't know what to think, he muttered, his voice unsteady. Before I could respond, a sudden, loud knock echoed through the apartment, breaking the tension. Merrick exchanged a worried glance with me. Who could that be? He asked. I don't know, I replied, my unease growing. Merrick walked to the door and opened it. Standing there was Sable, her face a mixture of anger and what appeared to be fear. She pushed past him without hesitation. Merrick, we need to talk. Now, she demanded, her voice sharp and urgent. Merrick hesitated, glancing back at me. We were in the middle of a conversation, he said, his tone unsure. Sable turned her attention to me, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. You've been filling his head with lies, haven't you, Lyra? I felt my pulse quicken, but forced my voice to remain calm. That's not true, Sable. I'm trying to protect him. Protect him? She sneered. Her tone dripped with disdain as she crossed her arms, ready to strike back with words as sharp as knives. The bitterness in Sable's voice was palpable as she stepped closer, her words cutting like a knife. You mean keep him all to yourself, right? I know your type, Lyra, she spat. That's enough, Merrick interrupted, his voice trembling as he tried to regain control of the situation. Sable, let's not do this right now. But Sable wasn't ready to back down. Oh, I think we need to, she retorted sharply. You're so busy listening to her nonsense that you can't even see what's really happening here. The tension in the room was suffocating. I took a steadying breath, trying to keep calm. Sable, I'm not trying to come between you two. I just want both of you to be happy, I said, my tone firm but soft. Sable scoffed, crossing her arms tightly. Happy? You think you can just walk in here and dictate how our relationship should be? I'm not going to let you control us. I'm not trying to control anything, I replied, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay composed. I'm just concerned for you both. Sable leaned in, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You think you're better than me, don't you? With your perfect job and your perfect life. I'm so tired of it. Her words felt like a physical blow, each one laced with years of resentment and bitterness. Merrick stood frozen, his gaze darting between us, clearly torn and unsure of what to do. "I've never thought of myself as better than you, Sable," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. "I've only ever wanted us to be a family." Sable's eyes narrowed, and her voice grew even colder. "Family? You're a threat to everything I've worked for. You've been trying to tear us apart since day one." Anger bubbled up inside me, a surge of frustration that I could no longer hold back. "I have never tried to tear you two apart," I shot back, my voice shaking. "I just want my brother to be safe." Before I could say more, Sable's face contorted with rage. Without warning, she slapped me hard across the face. The sound reverberated through the room, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. I stumbled back, stunned by the sharp sting and the sheer shock of what had just happened. Merrick's eyes widened in disbelief. "Sable, what the hell are you doing?" he yelled, his voice filled with a mix of anger and confusion. I pressed my hand to my cheek, feeling the sting radiate through my body. Tears threatened to spill, but I fought them back. "You can't just hit me and expect everything to be okay," I said, my voice trembling with a blend of hurt and anger. For the first time, Sable's expression shifted. Her anger seemed to waver, replaced by something almost resembling regret. I didn't mean to," she murmured, but the insincerity in her voice was undeniable. Merrick stood motionless, his face a mix of confusion and disappointment. In that moment, I realized the cracks in our family had grown into deep chasms, and repairing them would take more than just words.
"No."
"You meant every word," I shot back, my frustration spilling over like a flood. "You've been manipulating everyone, twisting things to suit yourself." Merrick stood frozen between us, his expression a mix of confusion, worry, and anger. "Sable, this is not okay. You can't treat Lyra like this," he said firmly. For the first time, it seemed like he was taking a stand. The tension in the room hung heavy, suffocating us all. I felt a tiny wave of relief knowing Merrick was finally seeing the situation for what it was. But as I looked at Sable, her expression hardened. Her voice turned cold and cutting. "I'm done with this," she snapped suddenly. "You think you can just come into my life and ruin everything? You're nothing but a spoiled brat." "Enough." Merrick's voice thundered, startling both of us. "I can't believe what's happening right now. I thought we could work through things. But you've gone too far, Sable." His voice trembled with anger and disappointment, every word carrying the weight of the conflict that had been building for so long. In that moment, I realized the fight had outgrown Sable and me. It was tearing apart the delicate threads of our family. The damage felt almost irreparable. Then, we heard the distant wail of sirens. My heart sank as the sound grew louder, signaling the arrival of the police. Panic clawed at my chest. What's going on?" Sable asked, her voice trembling with sudden fear. Merrick turned toward her, his disappointment evident. "I don't know, but it looks like someone called the police about this." The sight of the flashing lights outside sent a wave of unease through me. The situation had spiraled far beyond what I had ever imagined. I braced myself, unsure of what would happen next. The front door opened, and a police officer stepped inside, his face serious. "Ma'am, we received a call about an altercation. Can you explain what happened?" he asked, addressing Sable directly. Sable's expression shifted, her anger replaced by panic. I didn't do anything," she stammered, her voice quivering. "It was just a disagreement." Merrick's frustration boiled over. "A disagreement? You slapped my sister across the face, Sable," he exclaimed. The officers exchanged glances, their demeanor growing more serious. "We'll need statements from everyone involved,"
one of them said.
I took a deep breath to steady myself. Sable has been aggressive toward me for a while. "This isn't the first time," I said, doing my best to keep my voice calm and steady. Merrick looked at me, his eyes filled with disbelief and sorrow. "Lyra, I didn't want things to come to this. I thought we could fix it." Clearly, "That's not going to happen," I replied, my voice carrying the weight of my exhaustion. Part of me wanted to shield my brother from the pain of this moment, but another part knew he needed to see the truth for what it was. This wasn't just about me, it was about what was right and what our family needed to move forward, even if it meant breaking apart to heal. As the officers escorted Sable away, her protests echoing in the night, I stood frozen, unsure of what to feel. Relief? Sadness? Perhaps both. The whirlwind of emotions inside me was impossible to untangle, but one thing was clear. This moment marked a turning point for our family, though not in the way I had ever hoped. I turned to Merrick. He stood there, pale and motionless, staring at the empty space where Sable had been moments before. His hands hung limply by his sides, and his face bore a look of utter disbelief. "I can't believe this is happening," he murmured, almost to himself. His voice wavered, tinged with pain and confusion. "Merrick," I said softly, stepping closer to him, "I know this feels impossible right now, but you have to see how her behavior has been affecting you and all of us. This wasn't just about me. She's been tearing apart the family." He ran a shaky hand through his hair,
his gaze finally meeting mine.
His eyes were full of questions, as if he was searching for some kind of clarity in the chaos. I loved her, Lyra. I thought she was the one. I thought she cared about me." I placed a gentle hand on his arm, trying to comfort him. "I know you did, and I'm so sorry it came to this. But love shouldn't make you feel trapped. It shouldn't hurt you or the people you care about." For a moment, we stood there in silence, the distant hum of the police car fading into the night. The weight of the moment pressed down on both of us, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a glimmer of understanding in Merrick's expression. She's been lying to me, hasn't she?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my heart aching for him. "Yes, she has. I know this isn't easy, but you deserve the truth. You always have." Merrick exhaled a long, shaky breath and looked down at his feet. "I need some time to process all of this," he admitted. "Take all the time you need," I said, squeezing his arm gently. "Just know that I'm here for you, no matter what." As the night settled into quiet, I felt a strange sense of closure mixed with the uncertainty of what was to come. The family dynamics we once knew were shattered, and rebuilding them wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long time, there was hope that Merrick would see the truth, that he would find a way to heal, and that maybe, just maybe, we could start to repair the bond we once had. Whatever happened next, I knew I had done the right thing by standing my ground, not just for myself, but for my brother too. The weeks that followed were some of the most challenging in my life, but they were also filled with growth and clarity. Sable faced the consequences of her actions, charged with assault and sentenced to 3 years in prison. The fallout left Merrick in pieces. He wrestled with a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness, and confusion. We spent countless nights talking, unraveling the web of manipulation she had spun and uncovering the signs he had overlooked. It wasn't an easy journey for either of us, but slowly, Merrick began to see the full picture. He realized how deeply Sable had affected not only his relationship with me, but also his sense of identity. As painful as it was, it marked the beginning of his healing. During this time, Zahn became my rock. His unwavering support and steady presence helped me navigate my own emotions. On one particularly quiet evening in my apartment, as we sat on the couch with the city lights twinkling outside, he reached for my hand. "Lyra," he said softly, his voice full of reassurance. "You're one of the strongest people I know. I've seen how much you've been through, and I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself and your family." His words warmed my heart, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a genuine sense of peace. "Thank you, Zahn," I said, my voice steady, but filled with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you." As I reflected on everything that had happened, I saw how much I had learned. I understood the importance of recognizing toxic behavior and setting boundaries, no matter how difficult it might be. I had found the courage to confront a destructive force in my life, And through that, I had rediscovered my strength. Standing by the window later that night, looking out at the Dallas skyline, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. A renewed sense of purpose filled me as I realized this was my moment to take control of my story. The scars of the past would remain, but they no longer defined me. I had faced adversity head-on, protecting myself and the people I cared about, and now I was ready to embrace the future. Whatever came next, I knew I had the strength to handle it. This was my time to write a new chapter, one built on resilience, love, and self-respect. For the first time in a long while, I felt free.